Welcome to Speak, a platform where artisans get to speak candidly about their work in the arts and also weigh in on some of the biggest issues in the creative industry. My name is Jennifer DiMarco. I'm a novelist, poet, playwright, filmmaker, and core mechanic designer for games. And today I am speaking with David McCulloch, the author of, among other things, the author of The Wully the Mahar
Gome.
Thank you. Now, David, I have to tell you, there's kind of a running gag now already, even though this is only episode 4 of Speak, that I'm always afraid I'm going to slaughter the pronunciation of things and then I say it right. But you can attest, I'm constantly calling Wully a gnome.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I want, David.
But he would not appreciate that and would quickly correct you.
And in a grumpy manner.
Yes.
Yes, he would. All right, so now, it says here, first of all, of course, thank you for joining us on Speak,
Absolutely.
David.
Happy to.
An intro, I usually ask people, give me the David McCulloch 101, like before someone opens the Pandora's box of Wully the Mahar Gome. Now see, I just have to think, it's a hard G. Yeah. Mully, oh my goodness. Wully the Mahar Gome. What do you think people need to know? Now, from my perspective, I was like, well, Wully, right? Wait, before anyone dives into any of these, they should know what Wully is. What does Wully look like, sound like? How big is he? What is a gome? And why are they a little bit irritated to be called gnomes?
So you can find out a lot about me just as soon as I open my mouth. So the truth is, Mahar, another odd word with 2 A's in it, is a real place. It's a teeny tiny little hamlet, a couple of miles from a tiny village, a few miles from a sleepy town in the southwest of Scotland. On a rare clear day you can peer through the mist across the water and see Northern Ireland. That's where I grew up. I was born and raised there. My father was the village schoolmaster at Mahar School. So I had a very idyllic rural Scottish upbringing in the 1950s. And one of the things that my brother and I had to do, I was 5 and he would be 7, was every night we had to walk the half-mile up the country lane to Mahar Farm, to the dairy with a big half-gallon enamel milk can.
Yeah.
And they would fill it directly from the cows in the dairy. This was one of our little chores growing up in the country. And one dark and stormy night, I know that's a cliche, but it was.
No, I love it. Like tonight.
One of there were 2 dairymen, and they all, I'm sure, enjoyed seeing these cute little boys from just down the road.
Yeah.
And it was kind of windy and stormy, and one of the dairymen kind of peered out the barn door as he's filling up our can and said, "Oh, Davy lad, you better hurry home tonight, because it's in nights like this that Wully the Mahar Gome is often out and about prowling." So my 5-year-old eyes went,
Oh, sure.
"What's that all about?" "Oh, gomes are wicked little rock creatures. There's thousands, there's whole populations of them living under the ground in caves. And they like to just come out and irritate humans, because they don't like humans. Humans dig up the ground, dig up the rocks, destroy the planet. And yet they envy humans, because humans have emotions and are very creative. Mm-hmm. So gomes, these little rock creatures that feed off human emotion. But you better be careful tonight, because sometimes they'll bite your leg on the way home." So my brother and I got our can of milk, walking gingerly back down the lane. We're about halfway down the lane in the fading light, and there's big hedges on either side. And I suddenly began to hear alien chattering sound on the other side, and they were getting closer and closer. So we panicked, started sprinting home, spilling half the milk. We got back home. My mother was not happy that she only did about 1/4 of a gallon of milk that night, but we thought that was a small price to pay, getting her scolding to have escaped the clutches of Wully the Mahar Gome. Now, that image sat in my subconscious for decades as I went about my regular life and went to university and, you know, raised a family and became a doctor, did all that stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, grown up sensible David, you know, probably those two young dairymen were just pulling my leg and just having a bit of fun with these wee boys. But imaginative David thought, but what if there are whole populations and societies of these kind of creatures that just stay out of the way and both resent humans but feed off them and are plotting to destroy them and take over the world? What if?
Yeah.
I thought, well, So it's about, maybe 15, 20 years ago, that I live in Vashon Island and do a lot of commuting back and forth in my job. So I spend a lot of time sitting in ferry lines. And I thought, you know, there's only so much radio news you can listen to without getting totally depressed. And I do like music, but, you know, I can't listen to music all the time. So I would just turn everything off, get a pad of paper out, and just write ideas. So really, decades after that initial germ of an idea was put into my head, the concept of Gome Society and Wully, which is the Scottish for William or Bill. Wully just means Willie.
Okay.
In Scotland it would be Wully Nelson, not Willie Nelson.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I just started writing, and the concept just exploded onto the page in vivid technicolor, and I've never stopped writing since. And as you can see, these books are not small.
No, yeah, I was going to say, I'll hold it steady if you want to turn them spine up to the viewer. Yes, they are.
So, and yet the truth is, people who read these say, they're too short. I want more. Because the way I like to write, I mean, I've never had any illusion that I'm not writing the next War and Peace or anything meaningful. I wanted to write just rip-roaring adventure stories that people would just like to settle into a couch and just get taken away to a fancy place. So these are, they're page-turners, they're full of excitement and adventure, humour, mystery, and I'm an old-fashioned person. I like happy endings. So the protagonists in all my stories are the children. There's children 10, 12, mid-teens. They progress as they get older through the books.
Yeah.
From a huge variety of diverse backgrounds and colours. They have different problems in their life, but they're noble and courageous. They're surrounded by a whole bunch of adults, some of whom are nice and a whole bunch of whom are not nice. And they get sucked into these amazing adventures, and they get sucked into the whole world of Gomes, who live in incredibly elaborate underground cities and have lived for thousands of years, have political rivalries, clan structure, a whole infrastructure, and they feed off human emotions, and they are plotting to eventually get rid of humans and take over the world. And so it's in that setting that these kids get sucked into an adventure.
So from that, I just want to check in. I want to make sure I have this correct, because I have known you for many years, David, but that is the first time I have heard the origin story of Wully, and shame on me for never asking. But, so you're telling me that a Mahar dairy farmer who delightfully scared, I'm not trying to make it in a bad way, delightfully scared two kiddos and put this seed in your mind. And from that, you created the entire heritage, the culture of these Gomes, in addition to their politics, their society, their et cetera, et cetera. And I know that your books are incredibly the real world elements of your books are also incredibly researched. But how did you research how did you build the fantasticals?
It's a great question. I love stories where an author will just come along with me, and I'll just show you some amazing sights. I like, my favourite story plots are written in the third person, so that each chapter can be in the voice or the head of a different character. And I love having 4 or 5 threads going at once that initially seem, how are these connected? But they've got to be connected.
Yeah.
So I love taking, I've lived half my life in Scotland, all over Scotland, and half my life in the Pacific Northwest, so I know the islands around here, I know Seattle, and so I loved describing it. Like in book 1, it starts off in Seattle with that amazing adventure all around downtown and the waterfront. So I've spent a lot of time there, and I like describing that with all the senses. I want people to be able to, if the story moves to the hills of Scotland, and the kids get taken into an abandoned coal mine, I want my readers to be able to feel the oily drips coming off the ceiling, to smell the little pots of methane coming off through the walls of the coal seams. I love describing things in detail, and I love taking people authentically to different places. So whether it's downtown Seattle, or the urine-soaked alleys of Barcelona, or the bustling tourist city of Cusco, I want people to really feel it. And all of the real places I've been to, and I've taken note, they're authentically detailed.
Yeah.
Now that's a long way of avoiding your actual question, Jennifer.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to make you circle back to all of that as well. It's like David looked at my notes or something. I'm not sure that's fair.
But so I just said, well, where would rock creatures who are incredibly long-lived, where would they live, and what would their structure, what would their society be like? And the short answer is, I just made it all up. But
But you asked yourself. It sounds like you asked yourself a series of questions. Where would they blank? How would they?
Right.
Yeah.
And so the different clans of Gom are based on different types of rock, whether granite or limestone or gneiss or jade or marble.
Yeah.
And they come from different regions of Europe and all over the world, and they have grievances. They've lived so long, they have grievances with each other, they're political factions. Well, what you go through all the things, well, what do they eat? What do they drink? How do they light things? Do they need light underground? How do they, and are they completely separate from humans, or do they interact with some humans? So obviously not all humans are going to say, oh, there's a wee walking rock creature.
Right.
Nice to meet you. But interestingly, kids are far more open to strange ideas than most adults. And so Gomes have figured out that actually adolescent or young early teen kids are very susceptible to accepting Gomes and working with them and living with them and interacting with them. If a Gome is walking around and an adult comes in to the picture, they can instantly petrify and just be a rock again and be unrecognisable, and then they'll come back to life and walk away when the human has passed on. But I don't want to give too much away. But even though the Gome's ultimate goal is to get rid of humans and take over, they're perfectly prepared to work with unscrupulous gangs of gangster humans
So it's not that the Gomes they're all automatically lawful good. It's not that they are all just like friendly, law-abiding,
No.
follow all the rules.
No,
which of course we're talking about human rules.
Sure.
So yeah.
Truthfully, very few of them are. Wally, and the tagline of this whole series is, these are scruffy, rude, bad-tempered mystery adventures.
Yes.
Because essentially, Wally the Mahargome he's an incredible force of nature, but he's scruffy, rude, wicked smart, doesn't tolerate fools gladly, speaks just like he sees things, and he's kind of difficult to get used to. But when you get used to him, he's an incredibly loyal friend. How tall is he? About 8 inches tall.
About 8 inches. Okay.
And incredibly strong.
And he doesn't look like a garden gnome.
No, he doesn't.
He looks like a rock.
He looks like a rock.
Yeah.
He's got a slightly pointed head, but when he comes to his human form, he's got a kind of scruffy red woolly hat, and big thick legs, and metal tackety boots on.
Okay.
But when he petrifies, he just looks like a slightly pointed rock that you could pick up and throw like a football.
Which is why he's grumpy. I mean,
It's one of the reasons he's grumpy.
Let's be honest.
It's one of the reasons he's grumpy.
But now the books are not told from Wally's perspective.
No, they're told from the perspective of a variety of the main characters. So in book 1, you're introduced to Finley James Murray McDougall, who's about a 10, 11-year-old boy in Seattle, in Magnolia. He's a daydreamer, he's not very good at school, he can't concentrate. And he lives next door to his best friend, Hadley Kobayashi, who's a Japanese-American girl, and she's way smarter, braver, tougher than he is. And they get along great. And they get sucked into, and then, so it's the story is taken from Finn's point of view, Hadley's point of view, other people's point of view. Finley has a marvellous, eccentric great uncle, Hugh McDougall from Scotland, and he's the person who actually brings over Wally and gives Wally to Finley as a gift, partly to get Wally out of danger where he was in Scotland, and that's how the story starts. But no, the other thing I'll say, I mean, I've how did it go from that germ of an idea to, by the time we're in book 3 and book 4, this is a very complex and fully formed fantasy world of where all the Gomes were, and it has happened organically. The books get more complex.
They do increase in size. I mean, all joking aside, they do get longer each one.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, books 4 and 5 are about the same length.
And when is 5 coming out, David?
I was working on it today. I'm thanks to Brianne, who's just I think a brilliant designer. I mean, the number of people that just say to me, they just pick the books up. Oh my God! I don't want to put it down. It's just the kind of book you want to sit down. I mean, the font, the presentation. It's just these are lovely books.
You bring up a very good point. Actually, a lot of people don't know that Brianne is the senior editor at Blue Forge Press, but she also does herself as an artist most, not all, but most of the covers and all of the interior layout. I mean, and these in particular I have always adored. And David and I actually had worked together with another publishing house to publish, was it just the first 2?
Yeah, the first.
And they weren't able to do 6x9s and so thick, and so they had to be put out in like little parts, almost journals, a digest size, I think it was called. And I just love this so much more because despite the fact that the industry likes to tell us that, like, if most of your characters are 12 years old, then that means the book will be read by 9 to 12-year-olds,
Right.
because people like to read a little bit older. But actually, as you and I have seen over the years, adults adore these.
Right.
They absolutely adore them, and you certainly do not dumb down your storylines, your characters, the complexity of the characters. These children, and I think, and I want you to weigh in on this, I think that one of the greatest services you have brought to the literary world is showing the literary world that children are not simple.
No.
Their emotions and the way they are processing the world around them is just as complex, if not more complex, if not more conflicted and complicated than the way we process as adults.
I think that's right, because on one level, a lot of kids, I mean, Finley's an incredibly naive, wholesome little boy. He wants the world to be good in a certain way, and he gets really quite upset when it's not like that.
Yeah.
But no, all of the kids, and we introduce Alina in book 2 is this abused street kid from the alleys in Barcelona, but incredibly noble and thoughtful and great at soccer. In book 3, Tessa is a black Inca princess from Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And in book 5, I introduce book 4 introduce Penelope, who's a young Navajo woman who gets sucked in to be a token Indian assistant to a big CEO of a fancy corporation. So the stories become very complicated. The other thing that I love to do, because I'm trying to write books like the books I love to read.
Mm-hmm.
So I love larger than life characters. I love wickedly complicated plots. I love mysteries. I've written a couple of adult murder mystery stories, and kids love mysteries as well. They love to be solving problems, and so dropping hints and having them not really know what's going on, that's part of these as well.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because they're Scottish, and because Wally is very Scottish, and when he gets grumpy, which doesn't take much to make him grumpy, he starts to speak in the most incomprehensible Scottish slang words. And even if you don't understand them, so many Scottish words are onomatopoeic.
Mm-hmm.
So kids just love to say them out loud because they just sound great, especially Scottish insults. I mean, Wally will just screw up his face and say to Finley, "Oh, you're a ramstugerous tatterwallop." Let's just say that 3 or 4 times. It's good to get it out of your system.
Yeah.
So with every one of these books,
And it's written phonetically.
that's
what I love.
Absolutely. And also in each of these books, there's a glossary at the end of each book, which gives you all the Scottish words and an explanation of what they mean.
Yeah.
So a ramstugerous tatterwallop is a boisterous and disorderly scarecrow. And you can almost tell that from the word.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I love humour, I love adventure stories like that, and I love making plots totally plausible, but they get so complicated. By the time you're 3/4 way through, the reader is saying that there is no way they can possibly get out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're doomed.
Yeah.
But if you trust the author, stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a slim possibility that it'll work out okay in the end.
Yeah. I think that's something, and I know you already mentioned this, but I'm going to circle back to it, because that is something, is that we have a lot of authors, especially in America today, that are writing books for young people, and they make a point. Hey, life doesn't always have happy endings. I mean, some of our some of the most popular series, if not right now, when they were out, like the Animorphs series, ended the whole series on incredibly bleak notes, and the message was, hey, people die in war, and I understood the power of that, but as a mom of a child trying to read those, and they were age appropriate at the time for my son, it was kind of like, is this the way I want him to have this message? Is at the end of a 20 or 30 book series, is this what I want him to take away? And what I think I have to admit I've always loved is, no matter how bleak it looks, like you said, you love a happy ending. We can't give our kids or even our significant others or anyone really a guaranteed happy ending every time in life.
Right.
But isn't it nice to have the power to do that?
I think so. None of the happy endings are sappy.
Yes.
They're not, pulling a ridiculous cliche trick. Oh, actually, there was an evil twin who did, and none of that stuff.
Deus Ex Machina.
No,
yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
And almost every book, happy ending, but there's something still going on that's going to maybe even get worse, and so you have to go on to the next page. So they aren't. They're happy but complex.
Yeah.
And it's funny, one of my best friends, her son Henry, who's now 11, but he's been loving these books since he was about 8. And I just had a Zoom with his mom and Henry the other day because he just finished this, and his mum turned to him and said, "Henry, what do you like about these stories so much? You're always talking about them." And he just beamed and said, Wally always manages to find a solution to the problems. And I just think that's empowering for kids.
Yes, it is.
To try and figure out a solution to the problems.
There's a very deep lesson there, David, that even someone who's grumpy, I'm often called grumpy, even someone who's grumpy can often find the solutions to problems.
Absolutely, and that's why Wally and some of the other, I think, great Gome characters that are friends of his have very complex and nuanced personalities, and Wally's best friend is Alexander Clambucket Targomshi of Callanish. Big Sandy to his friends, and he's a big square lump of a Gome, but he's a Highlander, and he speaks with a soft, thoughtful accent, and he's always saying, "Willie, you're always jumping to the wrong conclusions. You need to slow down and think things through." And then he'll pause and light his pipe, and Willie's think, "Well, tell me." So there's wonderful interactions between the different Gome characters as well as the Gomes and the kids.
Now, just to make sure we don't forget this, I have to say, because I am absolutely certain that everyone watching us right now is wondering to themselves, are audiobooks where David reads these books available? And the answer is...
The answer is yes. I mean, one of the things that I love about Blue Forge Press is the real hard copy books are produced to a beautiful degree. These books are also available to download in an ebook, Kindle type format, and as audiobooks. And with the audiobooks, I narrate the stories. I'm pretty good at doing a Scottish accent.
And your son does the music, is that correct?
Yes, my grown son Murray and one of his pals, they're both great musicians, and so the kind of bumper background music throughout the audiobooks is original music with that Celtic flavour from Murray McCulloch and Sean Higgins. So yes, for those, and again, some of my young readers, even though they like to read the book, they like it even more to listen to me telling the story as they follow along.
Can you imagine? This is thousands and thousands of pages combined.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's That's out. It's not just hours of entertainment, but like you say, they can be read, they can be listened to.
Yeah.
If the kiddo is too small, the books won't fit in their backpack.
Right.
They can always get the ebooks and put it on their little cute Kindle.
Exactly.
I mean, I really do love that. Before we go on to talking about some of the large issues in the industry, I did just want folks to know that you are also the David McCulloch who wrote The Uncertain Journey with your wife, Catherine Crawford. And that is nonfiction. It chronicles the journey that you guys took together toward her healing and health. And I'm not going to say anything more because I know you want to focus on Wally today. And, you know, maybe we're just going to have you and Catherine back together and we can talk about The Uncertain Journey. But I don't want people to think that this is all that you do, because it's not. I almost do want to circle. I had no idea. So there was a tiny potential we could have had Wally in the 1950s.
Yeah.
If you had just started, geez, David,
Yeah.
you had to grow up and go to college and
Yeah.
become a doctor and, you know, be this amazing person in the world, but then you also got to rest. So I kind of like that. It's like two complete lives.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, my heart has always been as an author. I mean, I was writing little chapter books in grade school.
Yeah.
I wrote a chapter book about, and I illustrated by cutting pictures out of magazines, and I used spare wallpaper to bind it into a real book.
Yeah.
About a pet cheetah that didn't make a very good house pet.
No.
And then in high school, when I was about 14, I took a couple of creative writing classes and wrote some teenage angst short stories.
Well, sure, as
we
we all do. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah. And then had to put all that aside for a while. But it's just a delight. I mean, I've never had a day of writer's block in my life. I can't get enough ideas down, but I have. And so, book 5, and Brianne has already designed a beautiful cover for it.
Oh, that's right, because there's a preview of the cover in the back
Yeah.
of 4. Yes, I do know that.
It's called Desolation Moor, and it takes the story to even more dark and dangerous places. So I don't know, maybe they won't get out of it this time, but...
Do you... I so doubt that. I mean, we all doubt it at this point. Do you think you're going to stay with Wally? Do you think you'll ever tie up the series? I guess really is what I'm asking.
I certainly... I mean, book 5 is vivid in my mind, and I've already figured out a possible book 6 and book 7.
Mm-hmm.
I think I will have the good sense to know when I don't have anything new to say, or it's getting so complex that it needs to be brought together.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm liking it, and I have enough of my friends and fans saying, could you just write a little faster, because I'm almost finished with book 4 and I'd really like. And one of the
write a little faster. Oh my gosh.
But the I write my own style of writing. I write at a pace. I plot out the big arc of the whole series, the big arc of each story, and then what will the main threads be. As most writers, I've got a kind of method to how I do it, and I plot out what at least 20 or 30 chapters are going to look like, and then sit down, say, okay, this chapter, who's the main, this is the first time we've met Hadley since the last book.
Yeah.
Where is she in her life now? She's a year or two older. And I just try and write it in that voice. So another thing I've been told is I have a distinctive, comfortable voice of the way these stories are written.
Yeah.
And by the time people have read 1 and 2, they just... a friend called me the other day and said, I just started book 3. Oh, it's just so nice to just... I'm right back there with you, because it feels and sounds... I mean, the story is completely different, but
But the characters are distinct.
The characters are distinct.
Yeah.
And the way I try and describe it is to jump right into the story and just suck people along. So write at least another couple. And
Yay.
I may branch out and do some other stuff as well, but
Sure.
I'm I wasn't trying to copy anyone. It's funny because another of the questions that you've asked me before is what's unique or original about these stories. And I feel as if there's no vampires, there's no dragons, there's no zombies, there's no Arthurian legends, there's no medieval knights. It's a completely different, loosely based on some Scottish mythology, but a whole lot of it just made up by me. And I just wanted to create a whole world that is just different.
Well, it's a one-word answer, David. I should never ask you that question. What's new and unique? Gomes. Gomes, David. Gomes.
Yeah.
No, all right. Industry questions,
Yeah.
David. All right. So, though I kind of see it as almost a natural evolution of book selling, a lot of people do insist that online booksellers, specifically Amazon, the ultimate mega online bookseller, are killing the bricks and mortar stores. And I will say, I do call them bricks and mortar stores instead of real world bookstores, because the internet is also the real world.
Sure.
And I think it's important to remind people of that, because what you say on the internet, what you do on the internet is just as valid as if you're doing it to someone face to face. Maybe if people can keep that in mind, things might clean themselves up a little bit. But when you go to buy a book to read for yourself, where do you buy it? And how would you weigh in on that particular issue?
It's a great question, and I think it has been brought into even sharper focus this past 2 years because of the COVID pandemic. So many people are even more scared to go out into the bricks and mortar world, that they're staying at home, and certainly it is incredibly convenient to be able to log on to Amazon or there are other sites, and you can just you put in genre and you get served up some offering, or you search in a particular author. But then the online equivalent of browsing is not browsing. If you go and say, I want to read Rick Riordan's latest Percy Jackson book, you'll get it. And then, people who bought this also liked, and but that's just basically some artificial intelligence algorithm
Connecting keywords.
And doing that, and so you're served up more of the same. Whereas if you walk into a bricks and mortar independent bookstore in Port Orchard or in East Sound on Orcas or on Vashon Island, you little clink of the little bell when you walk through the door, and you're in a new world. I love it so much that in some of these stories, I recreate the equivalent of, they're not bookstores, but just walking into little stores in underground cities that have the same kind of feel, because they've got a smell, they've got a quiet hubbub about them. And even though you maybe want to, that the fancy fiction are in the back corner over there, on your way there you might get completely distracted by other books. And I love that. I didn't, I know we just pick, and you pick them up and you smell them and feel them, kind of turn the page, and you're just kind of dipping your toes into the mysteries, and you may end up coming out with the book you originally went for plus a couple of others. And again, depending on the bricks and mortar store, so many of them are in lovely local communities. There's a coffee shop attached to it, so you can get your purchases, sit in a chair, have a cup of tea or coffee, and chat to other people. That is such a wonderful experience that I don't think most human beings would like to give that up and just sit on their couch or at their desk and order everything online. It's interesting because the other this is often a tangent, but Starbucks, another highly popular, taking over the world of coffee and quadrupling the price. But having said that, they create lovely, comfortable little coffee shops with fireplaces and couches.
True.
And I think that has actually helped local coffee shops and this and that to kind of do the same. And recreating the idea of having in this do everything fast world, encouraging places where people can come in and sit down, have a cup of coffee, see books, do things. So I'm a huge fan of bricks and mortar stores, but like you, I totally understand. I mean, that the convenience of being able to see an enormous variety of books online and sample them and download them, and it's more and more people are reading. That's one good thing about it.
Absolutely, yes. No, 100%. Though I do like something that you just said that has not come up before in a previous episode. You know, we ask these same questions to a lot of different artisans. You know, we want to hear a lot of different opinions. Algorithms. What they're good at is giving us more of the same.
Right.
Which amplifies more of the same.
Right.
Wow, boy, there sure are a lot of fantasy books for preteens right now. Well, that's because you're being shown more of the same.
Right. And a lot of them are about vampires.
Yeah, there we go.
And dragons, because what else is there?
Yeah. And I like that. That's a very good point. Is it, like, for instance, if I'm looking for a particular, and I, like you say, I'm going to find a particular book, and it's in science fiction. Well, science fiction is a massive genre. But primarily, if I'm looking for science fiction in the subgenre AI, the algorithm online is going to show me more science fiction with AI, as opposed to, have you tried steampunk science fiction? Have you tried space-based science fiction? Have you tried near-future science fiction? And I think that definitely that's problematic.
Yeah.
600,000... on average, 600,000 books, whether from corporate presses, independent presses, or self-published, are published in America alone every year. I don't have a solution.
No.
I do not have a solution, because we know very well, for a bricks and mortar store to stay open, they have to shelve books that are going to move off the shelves.
Correct.
They've got rent, they've got employees, all of these kind of things. And the same thing with online. They can certainly, with lower overhead, display a book, but then how do they get that book in front of people? And I have gone to Amazon many a time looking for a book that I didn't think was particularly obscure, that's even from a corporate house, and I'm on page 4, and oh, there it is. So none of these solutions, I think, are perfect, and I wish I had the solution. I think that what sets your books apart is actually kind of not just the gomes, even though we can joke about that. I also think that you don't dumb them down, and that is immediately evident in the length of the books. You and I both know 7-year-olds who are precocious readers, yes, but still, who have eaten the books up. Right. Might as well have handed them Oreo cookies. They were just like, yes, where's more, write faster. But then, of course, adults at the same time. The cast is incredibly diverse. You're dealing with they're wonderful adventures, but you're also dealing with a lot of morals. There's a lot of, is this right or is this right?
Absolutely.
They're certainly pro-environment, but not in a hit you over the head type of way. Right. I think you can't have gomes and not have an element of, do you not care about the earth? Right. You humans, what are you thinking? There is, I do want to kind of wrap things up in to bring it back to a personal. You have a very diverse cast, and I know that you write not just for all of the wonderful readers out there, but people that are very close and dear to you personally. Will you talk a little bit about that? I know that you wrote originally, did you originally write for your grandson? Or was it your son? Tell me, again,
So, I've got 5 kids and 8 grandkids at the moment. And so the main characters in the book, I've got a grandson, my oldest grandson is called Finley. His sister is called Hadley. I've got another son who's got 2 daughters. One's called Alina and one's called Tessa. So I have named, so I've named the characters after some of my grandkids and some of my friends, though the actual characters don't bear any
of course,
resemblance to them.
It's like a little Easter egg, a little surprise
Right.
in the book. Yeah.
Right. So, yes, the characters are based, as with a lot of authors, I tried to make them authentic and complex, and so that there are bits of my grandfather, some flaky women I've known. It's Hadley's mother's, I think, a delightfully, she's a wonderful, self-indulgent kind of hippie character, but you can't not like her, and she plays a great part in several of these stories. But
I like that you allow people to be quirky, and it's like you don't have to be this serious, button-down academic person to be like, well, that person's worthwhile.
Right.
The flaky or just the indulgent and sweet and over the top type person is also completely worthwhile.
The other thing that I think, and I'm sure you know this as well from your writing, there's a few characters in there. I introduced them thinking this will just be a couple of throwaway characters. I needed them to show some new power that Wally has.
Yeah.
So I introduced in book 2 a couple of louts and bullies from the town in the island of Lewis called Stornoway.
Mm-hmm.
They're lazy, they don't go to school, they take time off school and just drink beer and throw the bottles away in the beach. I mean, they're and yet I created, they're just delightful dopes. They're they jump off the page, even though they're totally unsavoury. And so I just couldn't resist bringing them into the story again later. And actually, so these are the characters of Boggy and Weasel. Drew Boggart, whose nickname is Boggy, and Donovan McGlinchey, who is a kind of a very kind of agitated.
I was going to say high anxiety.
Weasel-like
sure.
character. So they're a pair of characters that I created just for amusement, but they just jump to life, and so they essentially any chapter I start with them, it just about writes itself, because I just know the kind of idiotic banter and conversation they would have, and they get, since they're unscrupulous, and they're like low-level thugs that aren't very good at what they do, so they get sucked into all sorts of plots along the way.
Because it takes all types.
It takes all types
To write a good adventure. To enjoy a good adventure, it takes all types. Absolutely.
And they're also it's nice to have some comic relief. I mean, these are very meaty, dangerous, thrilling stories. So it's nice to be able to have take a little breath and have
Vital.
I think it is to just keep the pace and to keep the momentum of the story going towards a satisfying climax. So.
There's a story that we like to often repeat about the James Cameron movie, The Titanic.
Yeah.
That when a friend took me to see it years ago in the theaters, there was a point where the ship is going down and people are falling off the ship and actually striking the propeller, and like that I just, in this silent theater, I burst out laughing. Never done anything like that before in my life. And my friend, this young man, was mortified, and I'm just like, do you not understand the saturation of horror? An audience can only take so much.
Right.
And for me, I believe it was the mother tucking her children in and knowing that they were locked on that deck, something like that. That so oversaturated me. I was like, anything the rest of this is horrific. You've got to be kidding me. No. And I was just like, this is ludicrous. We don't need any of this. We've seen the most horrific thing now. It has been dramatized to me. Yeah. And I think that that does apply, is that you cannot oversaturate your reader one way or the other. Now, speaking of, walking into a bookstore and picking up a book, looking at it. Online, back to Amazon, they have a feature called Look Inside the Book.
Yep.
Let's talk about reading. You have something that you're going to read to us today. I ask, here on Speak, we ask folks to read one page,
Yep.
as if someone is just picking up the book, cracking it open randomly, or doing that look inside. You have a page selected from us. I should say.
As you can see, I could have been one of about 2,000 pages.
Yeah.
But I thought, let me just read you the opening page of book one.
I love that.
Because when part of what got me into writing was like 20 odd years ago, when I was having to do a lot of cross-country travel, and I get stuck in O'Hare Airport for a flight delay for hours, and so I wandered to the Watersons or whatever the bookstore was, and just picked a book off the top 10 bestsellers list, mostly murder mysteries.
Yeah.
And I got 50 pages in and said, this is crap. And I went and just tossed it away and got another one. And I may just have been in a bad mood that day.
You were just grumpy. Yeah.
I may just have been grumpy. Yeah, there's just a little bit of Wally in me.
Just a little.
Me. I did that with 3 books, and I just thought, these are, there's nothing original about me. How the hell did they become bestsellers? And I went home and, of course, said to my wife, Catherine, I could write better than that. And she just said, really? Prove it. So I've always liked the idea that I like stories that capture your attention on the first page, and by the time you're less than 50 pages in, I want people to say, oh my, I want to read more.
Yeah.
What happens next? And that's why the technique of having 3 or 4 plot threads going at once, so you end of chapter 1 and you turn the page. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles away on an island, he's a completely different character, and you've got to keep going 3 or more chapters before you pick up that first thread again. I personally like that. So, so yes, I would be happy to.
And I was gonna throw in, if someone out there is thinking about inventing a teleporter, just remember, with a teleporter there would be no ferry rides for David, no stops at O'Hare. But actually it sounds like it was Catherine. So I'm just gonna say, go ahead, invent the teleporter. There'll always be Catherine to say, are you writing today? So there we go.
So this is Wally the Mahargone, book 1, Black Hope Scar. All of these books have 3 parts. But part 1, The Rusty Pelican. Chapter 1, The Dark Watcher. The boy sitting at his desk was unaware that he was being watched, but 2 angry eyes were fixed on him, burning like red-hot coals in the damp night air. The Dark Watcher was growing impatient. The visitor should have been here by now. 3 hours of waiting in a cold car with a dull companion had not improved the Dark Watcher's mood. And the dull companion's constant moaning made things even worse. I think I'm allergic to this awful, damp, cool, wet, cold, soaking, freezing weather. I hate it here. We turn on the heater, yes? No one will notice. The Dark Watcher gave a negative grunt. The Dutchman was always whining. He didn't deserve a response. Oh, come on. My extremities is shriveling up. I'm getting a cold in my chest. Or maybe I'm getting double pneumonia. Or triple pneumonia. I had a cousin once got triple pneumonia in Rotterdam. It came on so quick. He woke up one morning, he was dead. The Dark Watcher gave no response. It would only encourage him. Rain started drumming quietly on the roof of the car before running off down the windows in slow, oily rivers.
David, thank you for coming
Absolutely.
today and being on Speak. You guys, you can find all of David's books at blueforgepress.com or walk into your favorite independent bookstore and say, hey, get me these books. He is a Washingtonian author, and he will be writing about Wally until Wally has no more to say.
Which will be a while.
That's right, a long while. And I think he'll be grumpy the whole time, yes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
He varies, but he responds to the vicissitudes of life, and a lot of them make him grumpy, as they should.
So understandable.
Yeah.
Very relatable, Wally. Very relatable. Mary Pope Osborne's Magic Treehouse Merlin missions, Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympians, David McCulloch's Wally the Mahar Gome. These adventures are entertainment, but they're also education. Children have so much fun. Readers have so much fun reading these stories that they're learning and they barely even notice. These stories are so full of action and adventure that you hardly realize that you're learning history and mythology and traveling the world. Make learning fun is what people tend to say instead of learning is fun. And it should always be. We retain when we entertain. There's a reason why so many kiddos can rattle off the names of 100 or more Pokemon, but they can't tell you the names of the elements on the periodic table. The truth of the matter is, doing better for our kids and for ourselves is just a gome away. Thank you for joining us today for Speak. Speak was brought to you by the 501c3 nonprofit Blue Legacy and is made possible in part by grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Washington Arts Commission. If you'd like to be a guest on Speak, or you have a question that you would like us to ask some of our future guests, please write to us at blueforgefilms@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
I spent a delightful evening of conversation about writing with Jennifer last evening. I know this is supposed to be a short video, but it is hard to keep it short when talking about Jennifer DiMarco. Jennifer is a remarkable human being. I've had the pleasure of working with her and have gotten to know her lovely family for over 20 years. Jennifer is a consummate professional. Her knowledge about all aspects of the industry of creative publishing is vast. Her guidance is sure-handed, and her follow-through on everything is 100% reliable. She embraces artisans from widely diverse backgrounds, interests, and personalities, and makes us all feel welcome. She never shies away from difficult topics in life. In fact, she is drawn to them, but tackles everything with kindness and humanity. She has given me encouragement and support to develop and trust my own voice, and because of that, she is a big reason why my scruffy, rude, bad-tempered hero, Wally the Mahar Gome, is beginning to soar. Jennifer's own writing is breathtakingly sharp, original, and vivid, and so eclectic that she can cover everything from children's picture books to edgy dystopian science fiction and make it all feel fresh. Even though her writing style and the topics she writes about are very different from my own, I still get ideas from her that improve and sharpen my own prose. You are a lovely human being, Jennifer, and deserve success, however you define that, in every aspect of your life. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, David.